Welcome to Empire Talks Back TV. I'm Wallace Allen, your host. Today we'll give you some information that you didn't have yesterday. We'll also make you laugh. We'll make you say, a couple of times, but more importantly, we'll make you feel better about yourself by the end of the show. You'll enjoy today's guest. We'll be right back.
When people are fed, futures are nourished. They can connect with the world around them, unlock endless possibilities, and thrive. Join the movement to end hunger. Volunteer. Advocate. Donate. Go to feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Welcome back. Once again, I'm Wallace Allen. Today we're going to talk about homelessness and housing issues. Today's program was produced by Mr. Don Smith. He is the project director for, Don, what is that?
The IE Pathways to Housing Network.
IE Pathways to Housing Network. And it takes a village to get this work done. Don, you brought some guests in today to help us understand more about the housing issue, the crisis, and solution. Would you introduce our friends today?
It's my pleasure.
It's easier. You've got two Karens.
That's right. so I won't forget the first name for sure. To my left here we have Karen Younglow, who is founder, president, and CEO of Lighthouse Social Service Centers, one of the leading service providers in the Inland Empire. And then we have here Karen Suarez, Vice President of Collective Impact for Uplift San Bernardino at the Making Hope Happen Foundation.
Ms. Suarez, tell us about your organization.
So Uplift San Bernardino is a collective impact initiative in the city of San Bernardino that's nested under the Making Hope Happen Foundation. And our mission is to build a generation of successful adults who are committed to growing roots in the city of San Bernardino. And we do that through neighborhood development, economic opportunities, and our greatest asset, which is our human capital, our people.
Very good. And Ms. Karen?
Yes.
And tell us about your organization.
All right. Lighthouse Social Service Centers, we are housing service providers. We serve both Riverside and San Bernardino County. We provide housing services. We have rapid rehousing services, permanent supportive housing, transitional living services. We serve veterans, families, individuals, and we have a myriad of other services. We provide mental health services as well as employment services, and really our goal is to assist persons who are unhoused to get permanently housed, and we also put wraparound services around the folks in order to keep them permanently housed. We have lots of partners, and certainly Don Smith is one of our wonderful partners.
Don, tell us about your organization.
Okay, the IE Pathways to Housing Network was created in 2015 as a way to bring together the community-based providers who are all working in silos, and our goal was to build collaboration, to have people start working together because it takes a village, and we have created a number of successful initiatives around collaborative approaches to addressing this crisis.
Now, this crisis, we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about houselessness, we're talking about not enough houses, we're talking about what does it mean when they say affordable housing? We have developers, it's okay to build an additional housing unit in your backyard. What does that mean? I understand that if you are a nonprofit church, if you are a college, that you now are able to build houses without going through the big, backwards, hardcore permit process. But we still have homeless people. I understand that the number of people that we have, well, Don, tell us about the crisis. Can we talk about what is the actual crisis that we're facing?
Absolutely. And really what it comes down to is a lack of available and affordable housing for people, particularly at the lowest end of the income scale. Right now in California and even here in San Bernardino, if you are an extremely low income household within the 30% income level, you don't have housing options. You can't afford a place to live, and a lot of people don't even make enough to pay anywhere close to even the average asking rents.
Which is, let's put some real numbers on this,
okay.
because I think many people are under the assumption that it's a lot easier to be housed than it really is. And for folks who have a house, who have a home, it may appear to be easier because their rent or their house note was established a long time ago when maybe it wasn't so high. But I understand that there is $36.61 or 30 that's required to pay the average rent of $1,800, $1,900 a month here in the county. And from what I'm looking at, $36 an hour is not something I see everybody making.
There's a whole lot of people that don't make that.
People not
A whole lot
making
of
that.
people.
Yeah.
And
A lot of good working, hard working people.
hard-working people. You know, a lot of people mistakenly think that people who are experiencing homelessness are somehow don't work or want to live outdoors and things like that. And it's nothing could be further from the truth. Over 40% of those who are in the extremely low-income category actually are full-time employees who are working hard every day but can't make enough money just for the daily living. And so
Sometimes they're working more than one, job, and then also there are also other. Excuse me for interrupting,
please.
but there are also other barriers because sometimes our folks can afford the rent, but then a landlord wants them to make 2 times, 2 or 3 times the rent. So it's not that they can't afford the rent, but they can't meet what the requirements are, for renting the apartment. So it's beyond just paying the rent. It's also what the landlord is saying is the eligibility for the rent, or there might be something in their past, their credit or a past eviction, but the eviction is very, very far in the past, and so there are those types of barriers.
We have landlords have issues. I think as we've gone through this COVID, we'll find that many landlords were able to come out of that okay. The larger the landlord in terms of how many rentals they had, the better off. But also know that there were people who had 3-4 units, and if 1 or 2 of the occupants were not able to pay, that could turn that landlord, into an upside down position.
Right.
Oh, absolutely, and the larger landlords were fine going through that. But yes, the mom and pops, the people on 1 or 2 properties, they definitely struggled through COVID with people not being able to pay rent and trying to navigate the complicated process to get rent assistance that was available. And so, it's not just the landlords aren't all the bad guys. Some people are, hardworking people just trying to pay their bills too. But the bottom line is, as you mentioned, the $36 an hour in San Bernardino County, you have to work 2.1 minimum wage jobs just to comfortably afford the average asking rent, which, as you mentioned, is around $1,800 and $1,900.
Doesn't make you comfortable doing anything. I don't think. So you can get it done, and it gets done within a framework, but comfortable? I would imagine there's a lot of stress and anxiety involved in that person's life.
Absolutely, and part of it is because what we consider comfortable rent is, about 35% of your income towards your housing cost. But unfortunately, if you're in the extremely low income category, over almost 85% of those here in San Bernardino County who are in 30% and below income are severely cost burdened, which means they're paying more than 50% of their income towards rent. And I see people who are coming to me, to my program, to help with rent assistance, and I look at their debt to housing payment ratio, and people are 70, 80%. And you talk about that one paycheck away, just one paycheck, when you're paying 70% of your income already, one paycheck, and then you're out. And then you lose that housing, no matter how good you've been all along and how good your credit might be. You lose that housing, the chance of getting back in somewhere, when you're competing against, every unit, there's 10 people lined up. And,
And then as we try to help with things like rent control, that puts pressure on the small mom and pop landlord as to where they can't raise rent unless, I'm not astute about all of the rent control issues, but I don't know if you could share some of that to help describe why the crisis is a crisis. If I'm a landlord, I'm seeing where other people are making a lot of money renting their rooms. What can a landlord do to raise the rent and still stay inside of the law? When can he do that? Can he do that?
Well, here in California, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a measure that limits the amount that you can raise the rent annually.
I wish they'd do that with the gas.
I
mean, if we've got the power to do it in that spot, it would seem that here in the state of California, where we produce so much oil, that we would be able to, put some kind of limits on that. But that's another conversation at another time.
But the truth
to the same people that we have to complain about, however, about housing.
The truth is, even while it might make sense that every year you want to raise your rent 5%, 10%, for the people who are already on the margins, that 5%, every time we raise rents 5%, we got several thousand people who are going to lose their housing just automatically because it gets to that threshold. And you talk about older adults trying to live off $1,100 in Social Security.
Yes.
And they may be somewhere for 20 years, and the rent kept creeping up. Maybe it started at $500 when they moved there, but now all of a sudden it's up to $900, and now they got to pay $900 out of their $1,100 and try to survive off of that $200. It's untenable. And older adults are the fastest growing amongst those experiencing homelessness nationwide, and definitely here in San Bernardino County.
So what does that number
Huge
look like?
increase.
Well, because benefits are not keeping up with the cost of living.
Just like wages.
So wages are not growing with the cost of living, but because our seniors' benefits are also not increasing with the cost of living, which is why so many seniors are falling into homelessness.
Well, Wallace Allen Sr. understands that.
It's a travesty. It's a travesty.
Yeah, seniors represent about 1 in 4 people who are over 55. About 1 in 4 of those who have been identified as homeless in San Bernardino County and nationwide. And amongst the unsheltered, so over almost 50% of those who are in that older category are unsheltered homeless. So it's becoming, and then they have health. You add a health condition on top of that.
What kind of numbers are we actually talking about? And can we give a demographic profile of who those homeless people are?
I don't want to dominate all the talking.
Go ahead.
No, you have all the data.
Well, really, first and foremost, it's everybody. The idea that it's the person with a behavioral health issue that is having issues. There certainly are those, and people with substance abuse, and all of that is happening on the streets.
Our veterans and our older veterans also are.
Well, so veterans is a big category. Families with children is one that I worry about the most, and particularly single mothers with children, and particularly African American single mothers with children. Of the African Americans that are homeless, over 50% are in families with children, and over 60% of those are single mothers with children. Living in their cars, crashing, on the couch at their friends and their moms and their sisters, all because they don't. Unaccompanied women is a growing one, particularly safety issues for unaccompanied women trying to survive on the streets.
A very dramatic number if this is accurate, and I'm going to ask you, is it accurate, is that of the homeless people, though African Americans in the county of San Bernardino represent approximately 8%, that of the homeless people, African Americans are 40%. Is that an accurate number?
Well, so based on the point in time count, which is when we do those numeric measurements, in the 2023 point in time count, African Americans were at 25% of the counted on that single day. But over the course of the year, African Americans are 40% of those who are accessing services through our homeless system.
Another element of the crisis, and that's the point in time count and your annual count of actual service. How do those match up in terms of this crisis? And explain what the point in time count is.
So the point in time count is an annual effort nationwide. Over 400 communities across the country during the last week of January every year are charged with doing a both a sheltered and unsheltered count of folks who are experiencing homelessness in their communities. Now, it's not designed to, this is the number, but you use the same methodology over and over every year so you can measure progress, there are increases and decreases. So that's done every year nationwide. This year, for the first time after the 2023 count, we saw a 12% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness. It was the highest number since the count process started in 2007, the highest number of people experiencing homeless and the highest increase, and the numbers increased in every category. And in San Bernardino County, it's even worse. Our numbers went up over 25.9% from 22 to 23.
I think the figure said 125%, but that was meaning just 25% on top of
Yes, it was 25.9% increase from 2022 to 2023 in our count numbers here in San Bernardino County.
And it's not like we're not throwing money at the problem. I don't know if we're throwing it in the right direction, but I read that the county of San Bernardino allocated some $71 million for affordable housing, or for, I hate to use that term affordable housing, because to you and me and the average person, affordable housing would suggest this is housing that people could afford. But actually, affordable housing means not market price, not prime market price, or it is market price for the standard of house that I'm building, which isn't the standard of house that I'm building for luxury homes. These are affordable homes for people who are working good jobs, making that $30, $40 an hour necessary to pay for. Or what is it?
Well, what we call affordable housing is basically government subsidized market housing. So what the government fills the gap between what this household can pay, which in most programs they only have to pay 30% of their income, and then the government pays the balance. So the providers are still making their money.
Because we're dealing, I think it's important to deal with the attitude that we function under. And somehow, people, when they hear this subsidy, they think this is total support, welfare support for the homeless. Whereas developers possibly wouldn't be able to get their development done were it not for that complementary or supplementary money from the government. Much like food stamps. Food stamps certainly make it easier for a person to eat, but they certainly help the grocery stores stay in business.
The farmers. It was created for
farmers. We're going to have to take a short break. And farmers.
It was created
But
for
then
the
the black farmer's going to argue with you about that part too. But we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to continue the conversation. And we've talked about the crisis. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the actual situation we're in now as we come back. All right? Probably have to talk about the crisis a little bit more too, but we'll be right back. Thank you.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, mean, please. That's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug. You know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for you. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Welcome back. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm still Wallace Allen, and we still have the wonderful guests that were here on the first segment. We're going to talk a bit now about the actual programs that these people represent and some of the results of their program. And I think, once again, that'll make you feel a little bit better about what we're doing here in San Bernardino and Riverside counties about the homeless situation and about building housings. Don, I spoke in the last segment about $71 million that the county of San Bernardino has put into the magic bag for developers to open up and build affordable housing. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, it was 72 million, and
whole $1 million I missed.
there you go.
Get that right.
And they're looking to add more.
Maybe
so
that
this
was going to come to me or something. I don't know.
So the Board of Supervisors made a strong fiscal commitment to tackling this challenge with that allocation. So some of the funding is going to a new project that's going to provide substance abuse treatment services, recuperative care services, and transitional housing services for people who are currently unsheltered and need that kind of help, followed with lots of wraparound services.
Interruption. How many people, how much a percentage of people are really in need of the mental health support? And my real question is how many people, if we can tell, are on the streets because of that? Because I know that there's some people who have been on the street for a period of time who have now found that has created mental problems. So we've got people who were homeless because they had mental issues, and we have people who have mental issues now because they've been homeless. How do we break that down? How do you work with that? And I didn't mean to interrupt, but you know that's what I'm here for.
That's all right. Anybody else want to talk? Okay. Roughly 25-30% of those who are living on the streets consistently have mental health challenges, whether they came about as they were on the street or they had them going in. That kind of separation in the data we don't have, but definitely close to a third of the folks are dealing with some kind of mental health challenge that shouldn't necessarily be a barrier to them having a place to live. We have.
I don't know, Don, if all of us went home to our house today and it was no longer there, I know at least one of the four of us would have real stress issues.
Yeah.
And probably me. Okay, because I've been used to having my house probably longer than you guys have. That type of surprise, that type of circumstance, losing my job, not because I didn't do the job, but maybe business was bad. Somebody getting sick. I mean, there's 1,000 ways that your income can get disrupted, and that if you're that one check away, and most are, what do we do? How do we deal with that? This is this moment in time count. It's important, but then as we look at the year-long services that we have to provide, Karen, as you look at the services you provide, I know that we talked earlier, you were saying permanent housing is your goal.
Yes. Yeah.
But then as we say permanent housing, we realize that you mean permanent, more permanent than temporary, but not permanent like I bought a house.
Yes. Yeah.
Explain that
Yeah.
to us,
So-
what your services are.
Thank you. So when I say permanent housing, what I mean is that not a shelter, not transitional housing. I mean that you have housing where you are the leaseholder, where it is your housing, where you permanently live there. No, it's not. It's not a home. It's not a house that you own, but it is a house that either you rent or we, Lighthouse, we may be the master leasers, but you are the tenant there. So it's where you go every single day. And I did want
You know where
to.
your stuff is.
And you know where
And
your
you can
stuff is.
leave and
Yes,
lock the door
yeah.
and
Have to
know
follow
they're
any
coming
program
back.
requirements or anything.
Yeah.
You just got to pay
Yeah.
your rent and not cause any
Yeah.
problems.
And I did want to address something
And
that
good
you
support,
said
right?
because
Good support.
I do think it's important. So you said, well, what happens if I lost my job and if something happened and I had a mental health crisis or something like that. And I think you're absolutely right. But if you have a mental health crisis, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should lose your housing. Or if you have a mental health crisis, it doesn't necessarily mean
If I lose
that-
my job, I don't want me to lose my house.
Right,
Right.
and it doesn't, and
Right.
it doesn't mean that someone should come in
Right.
and take your home, and it also doesn't mean that you don't deserve to have a home. So what we believe in this county is something called Housing First, and so what that says is that everyone deserves a home. And as service providers, it's our job to figure out how we can help you to get into a home, but not just get into a home, but to then be able to stay in that home. So if you have a mental health issue, a mental health crisis, then what we have to do is we have to figure out how to get you into housing and then how to get the services in, and as Dawn was talking about, get the services in to wrap around so that you can then stay into housing. So if that means that, we need to have the therapist come and like with Lighthouse, our case managers come to you in your house. We provide those services. We come to you. You don't come to us. Okay, our services come to you. That includes our case management services, and that also includes our therapists. Okay, you don't come into the office to see us. We come to you, to your home, because we want to help you to stabilize in your housing. And if you need medication, if you need transportation to the doctor, whatever it is that you need in order to stay in housing, then we need to help you to get that. We need to help you to identify the resources in your community that are going to help you to stay in housing. Because guess what? Lighthouse, we're not going to be there forever.
So with your service, what is the ideal client and the time frame that you work with the ideal client, assuming that the ideal circumstances to help that client take place?
There is no ideal client, no ideal time, and no ideal. Okay, every client is individual, every time frame. Okay, so services, for rapid rehousing, can run from 12 to about 24 months. But a client might come in and they may only need the services for 3 months, or they may need the services for 6 months, or they may need them for 12 months, so what our job is to sit down with the client, talk with the client, set goals, work with the client on a regular basis, and to figure out with the client what is the time frame of services that you need. Okay, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to give too little and we don't want to give too much.
And you
Okay.
don't want to get a client that does not have that serviceable exit from your program. That being that you have, when I say ideal client, there is no ideal client, but there is a client that is more apt to complete your program successfully than there is another type of client. And I would imagine that the client who has more mental issues, that has the lack of ability to maintain a job, he may have your 24 months of service, but that would be 24 months that on the 25th month, he would be facing what he faced 24 months ago.
Well, a
If
client,
we allowed
If we allow it.
If
Yeah.
we allowed that to take place,
I
then I
would
would
agree.
imagine that in your screening, you're going to have to, at some point, cut bait on a certain profile of a client. And that's when I say,
No, we're not. No,
not
we're
allowed to
not.
do that.
No, we're not.
Very
but
good.
but a client does get to make their own decision.
Yes.
So a client does get to say that they no longer want the services. They
well,
get
I'm
to say
thinking more
that.
about that one who does want the services, who has not been able to secure all of the standards that we would normally like to have them secure before they were
Yeah.
exited from the program. And the program
Yeah.
has its beginning and it has
Yeah.
its end.
That's true. I think he's talking about more like if a client, like we've shown them housing and shown them housing and shown them saying no, 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 denying housing and
I think he's talking about the one who did the 24 months, was doing fine, but still not ready to be on their own without some kind of
Yeah,
support.
yeah,
We
and-
call
and
that-
so- yeah,
we-
so
we
what-
do have, so as Karen mentioned, if somebody may need 1 month's service, some people need a lifetime of service.
yeah, but
And
then
we have to
I
have a
think
system
then we're
set
going to
up
put
to
somebody
support
into a
all
higher
of
level
that.
of care though.
Well,
in
but we
that-
have
in
something
that
called
case.
permanent supportive
Supportive
housing,
housing.
PSA.
Well, we used to
and
have-
with that, those come with lifetime
Yeah, we're
case
going to
management,
we're going to
so-
transfer someone into a
We
higher
used
level
to
of
have
care.
mental institutions
We
where
used
people
to.
were able to go in and be taken care of and have that circle of service available to them. We have that no more. But we still have people who need that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my assessment of what we've said earlier says that we have those people included in our count of homelessness. So there is a group of people that are not going to be
Yeah.
ultimately served
I see what you
with
mean.
what we have as a total
Yeah.
product, no matter how we approach it from what we've got now. And that's the issue. The things that we are able to supply now, if we were able to provide that to everybody who needs it, point in time, we would not be able to be successful in keeping people off.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of that level of compassion, and I'm also looking at the social issue of what do we do with people who have mental issues besides put them on the street, give them a prescription, and hope that they don't get the rest of us in trouble.
Right. And
Yeah, so maybe behavioral health,
Yeah.
Right. Well,
trying to
there's
help
actually-
Partnerships, right?
And
with
and
other
those people,
organizations
they-
that have those expertise and kind of also come in, because that's the point, right, of the
Yeah,
continuum of
behavioral
care
health,
too, right?
yes.
Is really getting
Yeah, higher level of
different,
care.
exactly, different organizations with different multiple of expertise, right? Some are really supporting our youth, and some of them are really supporting families. And then there is like recuperative care is for those that really need a lot of health and perhaps even mental health supports, right? So I think there are options, and what we have to look at is the landscape of like, San Bernardino is rich with assets. We have so many amazing providers and programs, and I think there is so much room for innovation because we have lots of land and opportunities for pilot programs. I think that we can build the communities of the future where we can take care of folks that might need a lot more support. But it's going to take all of us,
Yeah, well,
right?
that's,
And
that's,
everyone
that's
plays
why
a role.
the last
we are
word
gonna
on
be
your
bringing mental health
organization
court
is
in
network.
also.
Yes.
Yes.
Network. Okay,
Network,
so,
yes.
so
And
at some point,
collaboration.
yeah, at
That's
some
the
point we
only way to get
realize
it
that
done.
there's all of these organizations that represent a tremendous amount of resources,
Yes.
but if they're not tied together,
Yes.
Right.
if they're
Right.
not lined up so
Right.
that we can
In a coordinated fashion.
and
coordinated fashion,
coordinate,
that's right.
then we're missing. And even when we get all of them together, we are at that point we're in a better position of seeing what we're missing.
What we're missing, yep, where are the gaps?
Yeah, because we see what we have, which helps describe what we don't have.
Yes.
How many organizations are there that are out trying to serve and do the good work that you guys are doing?
Oh, God, I don't even know how. Oh, no, more than
More
I
than-
mean, yeah,
I
no,
more
I
than
mean,
dozens.
We have like
wow.
150 agencies that are part of our
Just our
homeless
continuum.
management information
Yeah.
system.
But there are even more. There are
But
even
there are
more that
a
aren't
whole
even
lot
a
of people that
part
aren't even part of the
of
system.
that
that are
system.
just doing that. But I want to go back to the mental health thing really quick. There's two big things that are happening to try to address that. One, the healthcare industry is investing billions in creating community support services that include enhanced care management, behavioral health, physical health issues, etc. And so they're now using Medi-Cal dollars
CalAIMS.
CalAIM to provide more direct services to folks.
What does
And
that
then
mean?
one other quick
CalAIMS.
thing.
Okay, go ahead.
There's also a very controversial thing that Governor Newsom put on the table was called Care Court. And so we're modeling that,
Mental
testing
health
it out.
court.
It's very controversial nationwide that we're
Well,
doing
let's-
this.
let's
But
talk about it. What does this mean?
Yeah, because I wish there is a mental health court.
So, in this situation, people can, if they're identified that they are unable to care for themselves, they can go to court and have a judge help them come up with, along with the wrapped around with service providers, come up with a plan for managing their life going forward, which they still have the choice to reject. But it's not institutionalization, but it is a connection to the state, where the state is agreeing, we're going to wrap you with
But the
services and resources.
Yeah, but
to
the
support you.
controversial part
very-
is because the state takes, right, the state becomes their caretaker,
Yes,
right?
they
Yeah.
go into a conservatorship.
Yeah, so conservatorship. So that's
Yes.
what's controversial about it.
That's Laura's law, right?
Yeah, yes.
So
yes.
it's controversial.
And it's just
but-
started. Riverside is one of the
thing about
pilot
it,
communities.
it's
actually, for
called
that.
court.
Well, 'cause they do have to go to
because
court.
they have to go to court because
Well,
the
now,
judge has to.
Yeah, was what occurred in their life to make them have to go to court
I think
to
because-
deal with their homelessness or lack of housing?
Yeah, I think it's because their mental health issues continue
Had
to.
would they have done something that would have put them perpendicular to the law?
They're determined
that
to
would
be a
have required
danger to themselves and others.
Okay, so that has some assessment has been made
Yes.
about their condition,
Yes.
and this person still has the ability to make decisions.
Yes, and they can still say no to all of it. We cannot force them to participate.
So
but
I
they're
guess the
given
question
opportunity.
is that when we had the mental institutions, what was the relationship between the state and the patient, and is it much different from what they're talking about now with the conservatorship?
Well, yeah, because when someone was institutionalized, it was not voluntary. It was, you were institutionalized. It was mandatory. It was not voluntary at that point.
Yeah, and they were being abused.
Yeah, but this is more. Someone still can say no, to this. So
Yes.
it's
so now
different.
well, Wallace, be careful, because we know that Wallace can be very crazy and say things that are very disturbing to folks. But I'm concerned about the money that gets involved when we allow a person who has been determined incapable of taking care of themselves to help make the decision about taking care of themselves after they've been found on the street demonstrating that they cannot take care of themselves. So we now leave them an option to stay on the street. But we do it under an atmosphere that everybody's making money but that person. It kind of bothers me, in the sense that we are throwing a lot of money at developers. We're throwing a lot of money at bureaucrats to help do everything but lose their job. Because the goal to me would be a sunset on homeless support organizations.
We'd love that.
I know you would, because I know
Work
you're
ourselves
passionate.
out of a job.
I know you're
Yeah, that's
passionate.
the
I know you're
goal.
The
passionate.
mayor of Riverside
That
used
means-
to-
That
Everybody.
means we solved the problem.
Yeah.
They
right?
introduced me like that.
Yeah.
Said this guy's job is
It's
to work his way out of a job.
Work his way out of a
Yeah.
job. And I sense that with you, and I think the people that are watching the
that'd
show
be amazing.
would say, wow, if everybody that's doing this has the compassion that these people do, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to take this break, and we'll come back. We're going to get wild with some ideas about best practices and what people around the world may be doing to make this circumstance better. And I'm sitting here with some people who have, I think, the ability, at least the heart and compassion to want to see that happen. This is Empire Talks Back TV. We'll be right back.
In the society that we were brought up in, is very hard on little black boys. You have to navigate feelings and emotions so the world don't get you.
Sometimes when I cry, I won't know how I'm feeling or why I'm crying.
I just grew up never feeling like it was okay to cry.
Yeah.
And so he really forced me to have to reconnect with the kid that didn't get to cry.
That's beautiful.
We don't cry, we gon' take our piece of the
We're back. This is Empire Talks Back, and we're not the same people anymore. We've moved up. I think I know I have changed. I've been informed. You guys have given me something that I did not have before, and I really appreciate your passion and your compassion. Our issue now is the future. If we had magic wands or zillions of dollars, what would we do? How could we solve this? What is the biggest issue? If we had to get one thing that would make it work, what could that be? I can see it in your mouth. I can see it coming out. You got the answer, Karen. What are you talking about?
If I could wave a magic wand,
yes.
It would be that everyone in the position to move the needle on development release their fear of risk. And here's why. Innovation requires you to take a certain amount of risk and try new things. Try new housing material. Try new size of development, right? I went to El Monte and I saw a project called Life Arc. And I don't work for them. Full disclosure, just a huge fan of what they built. They created a housing material out of plastic, and they're using
which we have much too
exactly.
much of.
And we post-consumer recyclable.
They tell me I've got it running through my body in little mini.
Right. Well,
I'm glad they give me that.
You can make houses out of it, right? Now you can make houses out of plastic. And if you go there, there's 19 units on their site. All of the residents were formerly unhoused. They have I call her the mayor, who's there. She was unhoused for years. And they have this beautiful space and then it builds community. They have a shared kitchen, so they make lunch and breakfast and dinners for each other. They have an outdoor space. It's not a huge parcel. I think it's like 14,000 square feet. They got the 19 units. They got a couple, like an office in the front. And they could build it in 50 days. And it was under $4 million. So I don't need millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars or gazillion dollars. There are solutions out there that are being tested by communities. And it has solar. There's easy ways to access the plumbing because it's kind of elevated. And the rooms look like student dorms. They're very nice and private. They each have their own bathrooms. I think for youth and families and single mothers and children who are living,
how are they affording it? How's the
partnerships? So they worked with their city. They received $1 million innovation grant from the County of Los Angeles. There was like an innovation challenge. And so, what we're trying to do with Uplift, we have a housing pipeline working team, our impact team that's under, the Uplift San Bernardino umbrella. And this housing pipeline is made up of developers, large and small.
Okay.
And we're all learning together about all these different types of housing solutions. And also the capital stack. Some of the most complicated types of development is housing because you need grant money, and then you need pre-development money, and then you need, local loans, and then
tax
you need
credits,
your tax, exactly. And so it's very complicated.
The welfare for the builder.
Yeah, so that they could pass on the affordability to the families.
Let's stop and look at that for a moment, because I used a word that everybody usually looks south when I say that word, welfare, south of the income border, south of a viable income, welfare. But it goes to our big businesses. And we don't have that same attitude about giving them money because it helps the economy move. I want to ask you guys something about, and maybe it's premature in this segment but a guaranteed income. It seems like we're willing to guarantee everybody some money except the people who need it. Point in hand. Let me go back and give you one of my heart pains. back when my brother was president, Obama, we were, we grew up together. Sure we did.
You're in Illinois.
Illinois, right?
Yeah,
State of Illinois.
but he was in someplace. Anyway, the banks cried and screamed and said, "They're not paying me my mortgages. We're going broke. We're gonna die if we." Mortgage holders were not paying their mortgage. Idea. Let's put some money in the deal. Let's give the money to the mortgage holders so they can pay the
be
banks,
okay.
and we'll be all right. Now that's my thought, but that's not the thought of my brother. That's not the thought of the administration. They said no. We're going to give the money to the banks, so the banks will have enough money to go harass the hell out of the mortgage holder to make
And
him
stop
pay.
whining about, we're not making no money.
So it's as simple as, where do you put the money? How do we do that? The banks would have been paid.
So Surplus Land Act has actually allowed the cities to kind of aggregate what's available for for development of housing, and who actually has the very first look are nonprofit developers. So it's not big for-profit organizations that are benefiting from this. This is actually a large and small. And note that it's really hard for really small developers.
Yes.
And unless we come together and figure out how to scale, right, have some sort of scalability with our smaller development community, it's mostly going to go to bigger developers. But there's so much opportunity in small development, like in infill lots and just spread out parcels. If we could scale small development, because our small developers have to go through the same exact process as large developers, no matter if you're building 4 units or 100 units. It is the same process that they have to go through in getting entitlements and their permits and acquisition. They go through the same exact process. But what's so great about the Surplus Land Act is that now our nonprofit community gets to bid on these opportunities at the local level first. So that is one way that our nonprofit community is also helping make a difference in housing production.
Does that fall in line with the new law that says the churches who own property can build without going to
It's the next step. It's
and
called,
the colleges that
called Yes in God's Backyard.
Okay.
And it gives any faith-based institution can develop housing on their land they own by right. And same with nonprofit colleges can develop housing on land they own by right. We have so much, and there's like
They've done it in Riverside already.
yeah, there's I can't even remember the number of acres that are available statewide on those properties. They've already
there
done
was
an
something-
assessment of that. I have that number in here
Yeah,
somewhere.
they named it some state. It's about the same size as Pennsylvania or something like that. But it's a lot.
But going back to your original question about if I could wave a magic wand, it's all about housing. The solution to homelessness is
Is
housing.
housing,
is the right.
housing,
Yes,
housing.
if people have a place to live, and we need to do these innovative typologies where we're building out of plastic, manufactured homes. I'm working with a company that is
Tiny
doing
homes.
3D printed homes. They're going to do the
Yes.
first one built in Southern California. It's going to be in Upland in the next couple of months. With a 3D printed home. And so all of these ways that we can find ways to reduce the cost of building the housing, because the housing industry makes money in all these different ways. Everybody's got to get paid, and that's why housing costs so much. And then all these regulations that get in the way that prevent you.
My father built
All of that
houses.
stuff.
I'm not against housing people making money. My grandfather built houses.
Yeah, and people should make a reasonable return, but the point is that the government will never be able to subsidize the need. We'll never be able to use government funding for that. We have to create naturally occurring affordable housing. Not affordable housing that's subsidized by the government, but build something where you can charge somebody $500 a month in rent and
For
still
all
make enough
income,
money
right?
to
For all
operate.
income levels. We should
for
build
all-
housing for all income
for
levels.
all
For
income
all income
levels.
wonder
And
what the
also
hesitation
housing
is.
that we can build quickly.
Yes.
And
Because
quickly.
the other issue is it takes too
too
long. It takes, and I love what you said. And see here, look, you time
we're all saying the same thing. Housing, housing, housing.
yeah.
And we have to think outside of the box.
How long
It's
have they been
all
doing Arrowhead
kinds-
Grove?
All kinds of
Okay,
housing.
let's get outside of the box. One of the big places outside of the box that we find a lot of money is at the government level. The government's got the greatest credit in the world. When the government says, I'm going to pay you back in 50 years, we don't see a time that they haven't done it. And so we've got people that whine and cry about the government owing too much money. That's like saying the government loves its potential too much to invest in itself. We are investing in ourselves as government. We are not building and creating bills. Guaranteed income. We guarantee income to corporations. Now,
Farmers?
what have well, and I like that aspect of the farmers mainly because I am aware of the circumstance of black farmers who have a history of constantly losing land because when they go to get the same government subsidy that non-black farmers get, black farmers don't get it. And we've had loan programs, we've had grant programs, we've had I know I owe you and I'm going to pay you back programs, but the money hasn't moved. Government money, guaranteed income for individuals, to me makes a lot of sense because no individual that gets the guaranteed income is going to be able to save money. And if I was concerned about that, I'd give you the money, government, Wallace, with the stipulation that you're going to use this money for housing, food, and clothing, and this other money that you didn't spend, you go spend it on anything you want to, but tell me what you bought so that I can say that you're doing a marketing exploration program, and that's why you're getting paid. Because now you're telling us what you would do with your extra money. We've got the hidden shopper, the surprise shopper for everybody else. Let's let people be that.
There's so much to unpack there. And the UC Berkeley just came out with a study that showed that for a whole lot of people who are experiencing homelessness, $300 a month could make the difference between them being on the street and staying in housing. And so that's where something like guaranteed income comes in. And when we talk about it, people say, oh no, we don't need to be giving the money away to people. But you know what?
But we give
you know,
money away to
all the
everybody
time. And you
except
know
for
what?
people who
So
need it.
here's some facts. Renters contribute over $4 trillion to our economy, people who are renting. And for local cities, they don't get any money off property tax at all. These people in mansions, they don't get any money off that. They get money off the sales tax of people spending their money. So, and studies have made it real clear. When people are paying a decent amount of their income toward housing, 30, 35%, when they have disposable income, they're not taking trips or buying boats. They're going to the store and buying milk and diapers. They're going to the local mechanic.
Right.
They're going to the restaurants and the dentist.
School.
They're spending the money
They get
locally. So
professional
it goes right back into the economy.
System,
Here in
absolutely.
Riverside, San Bernardino area, last year it was $32.8 billion contributed by renters to our local economy. So, you give people just a little bit so that they can be stable. And it's going to pay
And
big
it doesn't
dividends.
just stabilize
Pays big
them.
dividends.
It stabilizes the community.
The community,
It stabilizes
quality of
the
life for all of
economy
us.
for everybody.
That's right.
And if
Everybody
we're able
wins.
to do that, we can stop worrying about some of the other services that we're forced to supply for people. And they can supply those services for themselves, especially if out of our guaranteed income, we require that money goes to those specific places. As a matter of fact, we could even pay it for them. If it's rent or their house note, or we could just send that money to where it's got to go.
Good.
We have
no
all of
difference
those
in the
kind of
EBT card. Where you can only spend that on food,
Absolutely.
and you
We have-
get your
we've-
housing allotment.
Our
Only
solution is here.
Less than 1 in 4 people in the nation who qualify for housing subsidies actually get them. So, I mean, we're so far away from being able to help people
We've
survive.
allowed ourselves to become opponents as opposed to teammates.
Yes.
And that is very disappointing to me at my age. What's disappointing is that young people who have no other wall to lean on, think that that's the only one that's there. It's to compete at a level of creating losers as opposed to competing and creating winners that are able to share.
That's the whole American
Define
way.
for me,
Get mine
yes.
and
Yeah,
over
you
you.
get. I got mine, so you get yours. But the thing is that so many people didn't get theirs. They
Yes.
were given theirs, and they got it through their families or whatever. And this is the fallacy that they got theirs. you
And
know?
all the people who didn't get theirs, that brings everything down. So we all benefit when we
Yes.
all ride.
I'm actually
Rising
really
tide lifts all
inspired though
boats.
by our young people because I think a lot of them really care about the environment
Yes.
and housing is a part of that. They recognize that as it gets hotter or as we get with these weird weather patterns, right? That we all deserve shelter. We all deserve a safe place to live as our environment is changing. And I think they're actually really going to help us champion the movement of better development and better communities so that we have more urban greening and solar and really that's going to create more jobs. It's going to, the
think
green
so.
economy, right, is going to help us, reduce the air pollution in this region. I have asthma. I can't wait for the day. I love seeing blue skies in San Bernardino and looking at the beautiful mountains that surround us,
we
right?
are
But
in one of the most beautiful places on
we
the planet.
really
Yeah.
are. We really are. But every generation, I think, and every one of us has a role in making sure that our neighbors aren't unhoused anymore. We really all can. We can show up to City Hall and advocate for folks who can't come in and speak for themselves. We can, pass measures. We can support bonds and green bonds and things that are going to help us build more. I think that there's a lot of wonderful things on the horizon in the future because we are trying to figure out better ways to work together as a community.
Let's give you guys a couple of seconds each to tell us something great that has occurred to you or for you or makes you feel really good about the work that you do over the period of time that you've been doing it.
Oh boy.
Okay?
Well, I can tell you that I'm excited. I really am thankful for Kaiser and our health partners in the community because they have invested in our work, and we're going to deploy pre-development money, which is the grant money that comes in the beginning to try to see if a project's feasible. And it's going to be for smaller development. I think our biggest one is about I think it's 50 units. But we are really excited because in a couple of weeks we're going to have potentially five new projects, and the community's voting on them. So if you go on our social media at uplift_SB on Instagram, the community can vote on their projects and learn more from the developers of what they're doing in their community. So we're doing things a little bit differently,
That's
but
great.
that
That's
is one of the things that I'm really excited about. In what way can community come together to bring more development into
And
a
that
city?
message will be on the message board for our
Yes.
viewers. Don.
You go.
Okay.
I go. You're so trying to think. Okay. All right.
It's the quickest hour on TV. We gotta go.
Okay, all right. Well, one thing that we've done that Dawn is familiar with is that we have a weekly meeting that we do for our veteran. So it is a sin and a shame that we have a veteran who are homeless. And so several years ago we developed a weekly meeting where all of the veteran service providers get together. So we have all the veteran service providers, our VA, our housing authority, our Office of Homeless Services, our navigators. We all get together and we have a list of every single homeless veteran in our entire county. And we go down the list and we have a housing plan for every single veteran. And we review the list and we make sure that each veteran has a viable housing plan for those veterans that we have difficulties with. We case conference those folks, and we go through it. Do they have a voucher? How are we going to help them? What are we going to do? Where are we? So we have that. It's a fabulous collaboration. It's countywide, and so I facilitate that, and we have, it's wonderful. It is an amazing model, and so we're doing that. We're doing that collaboration. So I say that to say that one thing that now Lighthouse is replicating is we are the recipients of we now have a domestic violence program, and so we are a rapid rehousing provider for a DV program, and so we are replicating that model with our DV providers. So now we are working on doing something similar. So all the DV service providers, this is in Riverside County, so not San Bernardino County, but so all the DV service providers, we're working on doing the same thing, having our list. We're going to have a regular meeting where we're meeting, and the reason that we're doing this is that it's very, very challenging. Someone is escaping and fleeing DV, and so the DV service provider is saying they have to do this. The court is saying they have to do this. Maybe Children and Family Services is saying they need the housing provider.
Oh, yeah, they need a navigator.
So it's coming. So it's like all well, you're telling me, and we're not together. So it's like, what do I do first? What do I do? So I'm trying to escape this. I'm frightened. I have my children. What do I do first? So we're trying to say, all the service providers, we need to get together, and stop saying, we need to say what they need to do first, and stop. Maybe housing can step back.
So you're having success with that?
Yes,
That's
we
amazing.
are. So we're excited about that.
That Homeless Veterans Planning Group is the most productive 90 minutes in the county every week.
Excellent.
And it's just,
Well,
I
if there's
love going to
anybody
that
deserves
meeting.
that support and help is certainly our veterans. Don?
100%.
Don, we got about 4 seconds.
I'm sorry.
4
Diana,
seconds.
take
Okay, well, one thing that I want to highlight. Victorville just opened up this recuperative care navigation center, 120 beds, healthcare clinic on site, housing navigation and case management attached to it. They're going to replicate that in San Bernardino, and we're looking for a spot on the West End to do the same. So I'm just happy to see that we're starting to step up and actually face the challenge head on.
The Empire Talks back. I'm Wallace Allen, and I told you, you'd feel better about yourself because you've got these compassionate, hard-working people out here working in your name to get rid of a problem that we all want to get rid of. God bless you. Thank you for spending your time with us. See you next time.